Good morning, folks. Welcome to Coffee with Artists. My name is Rachel Wilkins. I am delighted to be here back for week 2 of a brand new season of Coffee with Artists. Today, I have a wonderful guest joining me. I have geological photographer Joel Simpson. Welcome to the show, Joel. It's great to have you here.
Rachel, it's wonderful to be here with you. Thank you.
And we are almost neighbors. You are also in New Jersey. You're out in Union, New Jersey. So we're on the same time zone. Do you have something strong in your cup this morning, Joel? Are you a coffee drinker?
I'm not a coffee drinker. I make myself a smoothie every day, and that recipe is available on request.
Fantastic.
It's prevented me from getting wrinkles in my face.
So that's the secret, huh?
Yeah.
So we have a ton of stuff to cover. Joel probably has one of the most extensive resumes that I've ever seen of anybody that I've ever interviewed. So there's a lot that I want to get through. Even before we talk about the art, I would love to just talk a little bit, Joel, about your background, about your history. If you could tell me just a little bit, well, first of all, for our audience, just a little bit of background. Joel has a PhD from Brown in comparative literature, was a professor and taught for many years. One of the most exciting things to me was that you were also a jazz musician who played professionally in New Orleans for several years, and now find yourself creating these amazing abstract geological photography. Joel, how did you fit it all into one lifetime, first and foremost? And would you say that your heart is a true artist? Are you a true artist at heart?
Oh, whatever that means. I'm so glad to be able to say I'm an artist now, not a professor, not a critic. Was all those things. But I just happen to come from a family who saw going into the arts as a profession as an extremely dangerous thing. My mother wanted I should have been a doctor or a lawyer, and when she heard I was playing piano in bars, she got very upset. My father was more encouraging, but he also gave me an appreciation for music and popular music. I used to sit at the piano and play through a fake book of tunes from the 30s and 40s and 20s, and he would sing them. And this is one of the ways we bonded. I was doing this as a teenager.
Wow.
Long before I thought that going into music, much less photography, was a serious profession, So I had to overcome all that. But and I went into comparative literature not because I was a big novel reader. I read a lot more science as a child, and I collected rocks and insects and shells, and nature was an open book to me. But because I felt it was the most honest way of understanding humanity, after trying the social sciences, after being enthralled with the social sciences, and I'm very glad of that decision, because it taught me to read, and I read challenging novels, and they just give such a sweep into human life, and also connections between the politics and the personal, and the conscious and the unconscious, and consequences of our actions many years later. All of this is in literature. And then, of course, in order to bear those out, we have to go to therapists and check our neuroses, and find out how we were formed. But I think that's behind me. I am having a ball, and I see for any art has infinite depth. And only recently have I been able to say, well, maybe I have something somewhat original. Not that it hasn't been done before, but it hasn't been done my way before, and I can tell you about that. But my first great love in photography was landscapes. I took 35 millimeter slides. I projected them on sheets, which I tacked up over doorways to try to imagine that I was back where I took them. When we took a trip to California by car, 1960, without air conditioning, and I came back and projected my slides of the Hoover Dam and the Grand Canyon, and I thought, oh, this is almost like being there, right?
Wow.
So I loved landscapes, but then when I went into photography seriously, I declared myself a professional in 2002. I thought, oh my God, the landscape field is crowded with incredible shots that are being sold for what's called stock. In other words, you pay for the usage. It's not put in the art category. And there was fine art landscapes occasionally. So I despaired. I thought, how I'm not anywhere near as good as these people who are selling for thousands of dollars or selling for $50. So I did some other things. I did some studio work, some body projections based on prehistoric sculpture. But then my great love of rocks, of geology, sort of took me. I mean, when I'm in a geological setting, and I'm sure this other people have seen this. If you've gone to Badlands, if you've gone to granites on a seashore, rocky beaches, it puts me in an altered state. I love it. You know, it does this to a lot of people, right? So I just followed that. You know, follow your bliss, said Joseph Campbell, and I started working, especially during the pandemic. This is very recent. I learned how to make these rock photographs even more tangible by emphasizing what we call structure, and this is fairly new in Photoshop. And I came up with discoveries that black and white abstracts and semi-abstracts can be very interesting. And then I looked around, no one was doing it. There had been some interest in photographing rocks as a source of abstracts in the 70s and early 80s. It's as if certain photographers discovered that, oh my God, we can be like the abstract expressionists 20 years before, right? 20 years ago. Although Aaron Siskind, 1903 to 1991, I believe, was a great friend of the abstract expressionist painters. And he was doing all kinds of that stuff in the 40s and 50s. But these other books came out in the 70s and 80s, Ernst Haas, Andreas Feininger, and then it kind of disappeared. With one exception, Siskind turned up in 1981 with a series of 100 medium format, but this size negatives, black and white, of the lava from volcanoes in Hawaii, like Mauna Loa. And it looks like dark-skinned body parts, like after a massacre. And he was very politically active. And these have never been published, but you can see various examples from the series in different museums all around the country. I just discovered this online. So I thought, oh, there's a predecessor and a very prestigious one doing what I'm doing now, looking at rocks and saying, we can project our own messages, our own visions, our own obsessions, our own unconscious drives and fears and loves into these rocks. He was doing it. He did it in one place. I go all over the world. He did it, you know, and it was honored but forgotten. There was never a market for it. So I'm taking a gamble that I can enlarge this. I did it long before I discovered him, but it's nice to have a predecessor and be convincing about it.
So this whole idea of art imitates nature imitates art. You know, you mentioned that you've traveled all over the world to take these incredible photographs, which we are going to get a look at, folks. We're going to have some of Joel's images on screen in a little while. But I just want to get to kind of the nitty gritty of the motivation behind the why. What compels you, Joel, to get out there on the road and travel to these far off remote places and, you know, get into these nooks and crannies of the earth and take these photographs? What is it that is kind of the source of that motivation?
Well, I've always been a traveler, and I went around the world in 2014 for 70 days. And most of what I did, frankly, was social and architectural and archaeological, with a little with some good geological photos now and again. So I've always loved travel, and it took me a while in photography to say, wait, I'm seeing things I've never seen before, and my first impulse was, oh, I can't take that. It's not as good as, you know, these famous what these famous photographers have done. You know, my models, David Munch and and Galen Rowell and um, William Neal, for example. I wouldn't see. I'd never seen anything in what they did. Jack Kinga, that what I'm photographing. Sometimes I can approach that, and of course I don't turn down a good landscape. But I was fascinated by things. I wondered, is anybody going to like this?
Mm.
But I was capturing things I'd never seen before, and I got over the hesitation to actually snap the shutter and take the picture. And then I got home, and then a few years later, I learned how to bring these things out and make them into images that I was just transfixed by. And I hope other people are too. It's not for everybody. And then I started going into the history of this art period, the Surrealists, and then the late Surrealists like Roberto Mata, Wolfgang Paulin, Arshil Gorky, Kurt Selleck. Well, Tanguy I would consider him a first generation surrealist. And by the way, the difference is about 5 years. It's not long. Right. Tanguy was born 1900. Dali was born 1905. Tanguy unfortunately died in 1955. I'm a great fan of Tanguy. And I went to the place where he spent his childhood. He was born in Paris, but his parents were Breton. And we went to Locronan and Ploubenac. And I went to those two places in the summer of 2019.
Wow.
And saw what inspired him. Saw the famous rose granites, the pink granites of Ploubenac. I said, wait a second. Oh yeah, there's some Tanguy here. Yeah, in the joints between the rocks, you can see how he took that into his paintings. The enigmatic objects, that André Breton called them des objets énigmatiques. He didn't know what they were. They were rocks, but they were modified through Tanguy's genius. But they were very clearly drawn with shadows, and you go there and you see the rocks that inspired them.
Isn't that amazing to see? I always feel when you get to go to kind of an artist studio, somebody who you've admired or somebody that you've been passionate about or studied. I think that is even beyond an experience. I remember the first time I sat in front of a Pollock, not necessarily in his studio, but just in front of a Pollock at MoMA, and being so emotional, so overcome with just it felt almost like a spiritual experience.
Of course.
Now, when you go into these environments, has there been any particular place that you felt that almost like that spiritual connection, because it has been so rich in the source of inspiration that it's provided you with?
You mean my favorite places?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Some of my favorite places are Disti Badlands in northwestern New Mexico. Cappadocia in Turkey, incredible geology and incredible history too, with underground cities and monasteries carved into rocks. The Colorado Plateau, which is how many 100,000 square miles in Utah, southern Utah, northern Arizona, northern New Mexico, and southern Colorado. And I'm going back there at the end of this month. Valley of Fire was incredible. I was there last year, and I'm going to go back and see what I missed. But these places that are rich with rock formations just put me in an altered state, and I go around photographing without thinking. It's intuitive now. My composing is intuitive, and I just have to remember. Well, here's the challenge. You see these incredible rocks. You see something, and you take it, and then you get home, and you see there was something else, but I cut it off. Oh no! So you have to be aware of what you're doing too. And I'm also taking panoramas and drone photographs, drone stills.
Oh, wow. So, let's talk a little bit about your process. So, you obviously have an idea of where you're going, particular formation or particular, geological site. When you get to that site, you say you feel this kind of sense of, you're doing this, you're compelled to do this.
Altered state.
Altered state. I like that. I think as artists, we generally all are tapping into some form of altered state. But what
That's why we
does
do it in preference to making money. That's why we do it. And that's why I hired you to teach me how to turn it into money, okay?
And we're working on it. We're getting there, Joel.
And I'm overcoming my resistances. And what did you call them? Your inner...
Your limiting beliefs.
Limiting beliefs. They're not even beliefs. They're they're unconscious fears.
Yep.
That's harder than limiting beliefs.
We were just talking about fear. I did a session on Clubhouse last night, and I love the acronym for fear, which is false evidence appearing real.
Right.
Isn't that just so spot on?
Absolutely. Absolutely. On the other hand, there are things that we need to fear.
Right. And it's good that we have certain natural fears, instinctively, to be afraid of a bear or falling off a cliff.
When you go into the wilderness, you have to be prepared.
Yes, absolutely. Have you ever had any close encounters with some kind of real fears? Anything? You're going into these really remote places alone, which in itself is risky. But have you ever had anything any experiences where you've been trying to get that perfect shot and you've perhaps taken that?
I'm not quite, and I do go with a companion. I like to have someone with me, and I went to the Colorado Plateau in January of 2020.
Cold.
Until February 6th. I wanted to see Bryce Canyon in the snow. And I bought myself a fisheye lens that produces these circular images. And I took a bunch of them in Bryce Canyon. They look like snow globes. Okay. And then I took them in slot canyons, and that's another place. Slot canyons, and they're just amazing. But when I went to Valley of Fire, okay, and remember, it gets dark around 4:30, 5 o'clock in January, and I had a friend with me who has some mental problems, and I said, "Okay, I'm just going down here. I'm going to try to get to this. It's getting dark. We have to leave them." And she said, "Oh, I'll come with you." I said, "Oh, you're come on." So then I went ahead of her, and I lost her.
Oh my gosh!
Dark.
Oh no!
Dark, and I went back to our rental truck, and she wasn't there. And it turns out, long story short, she spent the night in the wilderness, okay, in like 30 degree weather, with about a quarter of a bottle of water and no good coat, breathing into her shirt. We finally had two Army helicopters come out the next day, and one of them found her by systematically going back. But you can get lost in these places, especially in the dark. So, and that was quite a scare. Of course, they were the policeman who came up from Las Vegas, 50 miles south, said, "Would you take a polygraph test?" I said, "Sure." Then they found her, and they wouldn't give me the polygraph test, and I wanted that polygraph test.
What?
Anyway,
something out of the movies.
The scariest thing that happened.
Oh my gosh!
Okay. I was trying to use the last light to get to this place. I never got there. I got a few pictures, and then that was really scary.
Oh my goodness! How terrifying was that? Thankfully, there was a good end to the story.
Yeah, thankfully. But this whole volunteer group of about 18 people came out.
Wow!
Didn't charge us a dime, and they found her.
That is a miracle in those kind of conditions out there, and given how remote it is, that's
the signage is not good. The trail signage is not good. But I have a series of these 3 books which tell me where the good photographic places are. I wish we had this for all over the world. By this French guy who lives in Los Angeles, who speaks fabulous English, writes wonderfully in English, and we've become friends. We've become email and phone friends, and he gives me advice. You need it. Yeah. You need it. For example, there's a canyon that I desperately want to see. It's on Hopi territory. You're only allowed to go there with a Hopi guide. But everything's closed in Hopi land now because of the pandemic. And he gave me the name and number, the name of a person. I looked her up. We had a wonderful conversation. She said, "Well, maybe they'll be lifted by April."
Let's hope. I think we're all ready to travel. Tell me a little bit about this dedication. I was reading when I was doing my research that you had this dedication to the the issues surrounding the Dakota Access Pipeline.
Oh yeah, sure. Here's my book. And
we're going to put it, just so everybody knows, we're going to put a link to Joel's website and link to the book where you can purchase this at the end. And we will be taking some questions. So if anybody has questions for Joel, drop them in the comments, and we'll visit. But yeah, please do expand on that, Joel, because I'd love to hear more about it.
I have a friend in Tiburon, California, in Marin County, and she's a friend that I know through the election integrity movement, trying to clean up voting in this country, which I think was largely happened for this last election. And she had, speaking at her, she's rather wealthy, and she does wonderful things with her money. She has an institute there called the Sunrise Center, and she had Danny Sheehan, the great social justice lawyer, speak, and Chase Iron Eyes, who is now famous because he's been on Amy Goodman and he's been in the news, who's the Lakota lawyer who led the water protectors and got arrested, and Danny got him off because he showed the bad faith of the oil company and the state with their militia. So I was inspired by this, and I said, I'm going to do this book, and I'm going to dedicate it to you because you, in this particular movement, and Native Americans in general, are really the stewards and protectors of the earth, and we need to follow their example. They live with the earth, and often in industrial society, we're damaging the earth, as we all know. So that inspired me. So I found the YouTube video that my friend had made of Danny's speech, and I transcribed it, and we turned it into a document. Took out all the repetitions and so forth. And then I got Chase to write me an essay that was so beautiful and so poetic. I put it into verse. It's in the book. They're in the book. And I rented, I paid some royalties on some photojournalism that this wonderful photographer who'd been there did, and I put them in the book because it's my book. I mean, I turned down a few offers from publishers who wanted to charge me an arm and a leg to do it, but of course they would have handled the distribution. And I did it myself, so I could put anything I wanted in it. And so the book is about honoring the earth. I thought, what could be more appropriate than people who put their bodies on the line to save their patch of ground, to save their patch of earth, and they were unsuccessful. I went back there in the summer of 2018, and I took the pictures of the Missouri River where they went under, and even a picture of, I don't know if you can see it here, of where the grass is brown, where the pipelines go.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and then here's.
Well, thankfully, we're in a spot now where
Chase and me in front of.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that his daughter took the picture.
Very
And
cool.
yeah, so
the project that has been halted right now, thanks to the new administration, we're seeing certainly a focus on protecting that land, which
we don't need the oil. It's for sale. It's for sale to other countries, and they manage to do it by stealth, by following the absolute letter of the law and violating the spirit of the law. Anyway, that's a whole other.
Well, I think it's great because artists. I think there's often times that people say, well, artists should just do what they. We're hearing this a lot with kind of the athletes. Like athletes should stick to playing sports, and artists should stick to creating beauty. And artists for centuries have been right. Artists for centuries have been bringing light to social issues, and I think it's really important because we can do it in such a visual way that can compel people to really consider their beliefs.
Immediately, we have to be truth tellers. Artists have been truth tellers. Even artists who stayed away from politics, like James Joyce was famously non-political. But if you read his Dubliners, it's an indictment of what the British occupation of Ireland was doing to the spirits of the Irish in that time period. I think he published it about 1912. Wow. That was deep into British occupation.
So we are going to dive into and look at your work in just a second, but I would love to can you just give us a little snapshot of your time in New Orleans as a jazz musician? Give us a little historical background for somebody I really enjoy jazz. I've never got to New Orleans, almost got there a couple of years ago, but it is definitely on my top, kind of the top of my list of places to visit. Tell us a little bit about that, because it's there's so much creative energy coming out of that. That's very small little city.
Yeah, it's such a romantic idea, jazz in New Orleans. Well, there I was teaching at the University of New Orleans, teaching English. I had a 5-year appointment. It was ending soon. I was less and less enamored of writing critical articles about literature to advance my career. And I was just loving listening to jazz, especially the music of Ellis Marsalis, a local modern jazz player who just died April 1st of last year, one of the early victims of COVID, and he was in his 80s. And his sons, of course, are Branford and Wynton, who I knew Wynton when he was 16. But in any case, I got a little job at a place called the Maple Leaf Bar, and then I got a single gig with a small group in a public place, and one of the Bourbon Street band leaders, Lou Sino, who had worked with Louis Prima, heard me and said, "Oh, I need a pianist. Are you available? Blah, 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 come down." So I came down, and the guy who was subbing for him at the time was so good I almost threw up. And this is 1978, all right? But he wanted me, and he gave me the gig. I didn't really feel I was totally qualified, but I did the best I could, and I had a little novelty where I would at some point pull out a grapefruit and run it over the keys. But anyway, Count Basie came in, Harry Connick Jr. came in and sat in with us. He was 12 years old. And it was quite something, but it was the same thing every night. And I was so tired of it in 9 months that I got careless and fell off a ladder. I ended up in the hospital and lost the job. But I really hated the job by that time. It went from 9 to 2 a.m. 6 nights a week and paid me the same as what I'd been making at the University of New Orleans teaching.
Wow.
Same. But it wasn't a permanent thing. I was laid up, and then I started to get gigs in various hotels, solo piano gigs at the Hyatt and various other places. Eventually, and then I was studying very seriously, and I took lessons from a lot of people. My best teacher was Henry Butler, the great blind jazz and blues pianist, who was brilliant and never got famous enough. He was on National Public Radio, and he died in July of 2018. It was very sad. He was 3 years younger than me, too. Brilliant, and pianist and teacher, great teacher. He knew how to break things down. So I kept on going, and I played in the Jazz Fest with a wonderful vocalist, Betty Shirley. Made an album of my originals. Came out as an LP in '89, as a CD on an Italian label in '94, and after that, I was picked to create a CD, a computer program on diskette called The New Orleans Pianist by someone in Hamilton, Ontario, PG Music. And I created 3 of those in the early 90s. I also got myself a degree in music, a master's in music at
When do you rest, Joel?
And, well, wait, this is all very condensed. This is taking place over years. I sleep at night like everybody else.
And just to pause. So, PhD from Brown, degree in music. Are there any others up your sleeve?
Well, hold on. But so I got the idea that I want to do a whole history of jazz piano. I had done the New Orleans Pianist, the gospel pianist, and a third of the blues pianist for PG Music. And I want to do the same thing, a digital program, this time on CD-ROM, not on diskette. CDs weren't spread around yet. So it took me 3.5 years, and I got Dick Hyman, the great Dick Hyman, multi-stylist, born in 1927. In fact, tomorrow's his birthday. He's going to be 94. He's still very, very much alive, living in Florida. And I approached him, and I raised money, started an LLC, all right? My father's a lawyer, by the way. And we raised $100,000, and we created Dick Hyman's Century of Jazz Piano, which by 1999, took us 3.5 years, was the New York Times, one of the New York Times 13 favorite CD-ROMs of that year.
Wow.
It got a little play. It never made me rich, but it did make enough money for me to move back to New Jersey, which I'm very grateful for, because this being here in the New York area is really good. But it's like another PhD. And I became the expert in jazz history that I'd sort of pretended to be for a while I was writing jazz reviews starting in 1980. Okay, so this is 19 years later, this thing comes out. So I came up here, and for a year, I lived off my house sale. making it as a jazz musician in New York as an unknown, starting at age 53, is an uphill battle. So I went back to teaching for 5 years, but then I also got very serious with my photography because I was in the art world, and I left jazz piano. I still listen to it, of course, and listen to classical. I got this degree in music. I know how to listen to know how to analyze classical music. But the thing is, I've never made a lot of money. People who have actually gone into real professions have a nice nest egg, and I instead pursued my curiosity and my bliss.
Wouldn't you say that makes for a more fulfilling life than any amount of money in the bank could?
Well, of course, but if you don't deal with the basic survival, luckily my parents left me some money, so I'm not starving, but I still do weddings, and I'm very, very happy to be working with you. I think you have not only the method down, but you have the motivation, because I can see some of my own resistances, and that's what I discovered.
Yeah. It's funny because we talked last week. I had Pete on the show from our class, and we talked about resistance quite a lot. There's this great book, The War of Art, by Stephen Pressfield.
War of Odds or of Us?
Art, A-R-T, art.
Art. I'm sorry. Art.
Great book entirely about resistance and how so many people.
War.
Yes.
Like
the opposite of the art of war.
Oh, I get it. Okay.
So, this idea that, so many of us have this passion and this drive to do something creative, but we put it away because we've been conditioned to believe that we need to, just like you said, we need to be, the doctor or the lawyer or the business professional and follow that conventional kind of narrative that society has defined as success. And what happens is things manifest as a result of us being resistant, like mental health problems, like addiction, depression, all of these things, because we're not following our true path. And resistance can be so powerful.
Very profound, Rachel. I fell off a ladder in 1979 because I hated the job on Bourbon Street, and I wasn't courageous enough to quit because I didn't know what was happening. Scared. All right. Now, a lot of that resistance to art comes from the programming of our parents, who are scared for us. They just want us to be happy. They just want us to have enough money and settle down and be like them and have children and whatever. But maybe they weren't inspired.
Yeah.
When I did the CD-ROM, I investigated, read, and wrote the biographies of 62 jazz musicians.
Wow.
And it was such a sweeping thing because there are many of them whose parents never understood them, never gave their blessing. U.B. Blake was one of them. His mother never understood that he was a great success with shows on Broadway in the 1920s, the first black show. And a lot of them died young and made terrible sacrifices. Of course, we don't have a country which officially rewards artists the way they do in Ireland, for example. Until a few years ago, Irish artists didn't have to pay taxes. But you have to find mentors who say, yes, you can do it. One of the things that I learned as a musician was don't do music if you want to do it. Do it if you have to do it. And what that means is do it if you're willing to practically starve. Do it and what that means is that you treasure that altered state, that what the art gives you, more than you treasure security. And that's hard. That's hard for most people.
I think it's really important who you surround yourself with as well, because I'm not suggesting that anybody surround themselves with yes people, but be careful who your tribe is. Be careful.
Mentors.
Yeah, because there's a lot of folks that out there, and this is talked about in the War of Art as well, that there's folks who will say, well, should you really be doing that? Is this the right path? Purely because they're not following their true passion. And it's more of a projection, of them not being where they want to be. So I think we have to be really careful who we tune in and who we tune out when we're thinking about these kind of issues.
And you have to be willing to do whatever it takes. And that's where you come in. You actually show how to do it, right? The artist has to put out the energy and all the busy work, you know, and keep up with your followers, like Ron Smith, for example. You know, oh my God, do I really have to talk to all these people? And,
well, the thing is, you don't, right? You don't. But if you want a certain, you know, if you want a certain level of success and you don't want a middleman, right? You don't want the institutional gallery or the agent, and you want to do it by yourself, then we have to roll our sleeves up a little bit and kind of get down in the dirt and do some work. And I think
not only that, but it's pleasurable.
It is pleasurable, and I
all these people. It's wonderful. It's
right.
Hi. I just had to overcome my resistance.
Yep.
My leave me alone, or, you know, resistance, and that's part of it too. Just cultivating a public.
And I think as well, like changing that narrative from being overwhelmed by all the things that you have to do to being like having that childlike curiosity. Like, this is new, this is exciting, I can embrace this. It's going to be good for my art business. So I'm really excited that you're making these steps, because you have so much of a foundation, Joel, so much richness, so much story already, that, you know, seeing you put this stuff into action and actually, you know, put yourself out there is really exciting. All right, so let's look at some artwork, because time isn't ticking away. So let me pull up some of your artwork.
If you go in order, you'll see my work and then the famous painter that resembles it. This is a few examples.
So we are going to share the screen. Let's see. Okay, bear with me 1 second. I think we're going to have to do it like this. Let's see. Hold on, folks. And you're unable to share it from your side, Joel, right?
I don't know. I should be. If I can share, I can give you a
try and see if it will let you. If not, we can totally do it from my screen.
Okay, let's see. Now your entire screen. Okay. Now what? Is there a yes?
Oh, yep. There we go.
You're seeing it?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, I'm going to go here.
Joel's going to give us a little tour of his work and some of the parallels between his geological photography and some of the artists, the surrealists, the abstract expressionists. We're going to get a nice little look
here.
You
can see this. You can see the dawn.
Yep. Okay. I would make that, if you can make it larger, or that, I think that would be better. You can drag that out a little.
Full screen.
While Joel is doing that, just a reminder, folks, that we are here every Friday. We're here 11 o'clock every Friday, Coffee with Artists. If anybody has any questions for Joel today, do drop them in the comments. We're going to be here until about noon. And yeah, do jump in and contribute and ask some questions, folks. We'd love to hear from you. All right, Joel, I'm handing this over to you.
Okay, very good. So you've seen two landscapes, and then my reference to the Scream. This is a Dali reference taken from rocks very close to his house, and there's his Face of War. This is my surrealist rock formation with the phantom figures. See the elephant legs?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There are the elephant legs. All right.
Wow.
Two from Dali. I was actually thinking of that when I took this picture. That's from Wadi Rum in Jordan, and this is, of course, the Temptation of St. Anthony. This is, let me see if I can pause this. Yeah, okay. This I consider a liminal figuration photograph taken from Valley of Fire in Nevada, Valley of Fire State Park. And there's so much here, but it's not quite explicit. If you look down here, this looks like fingers, right? And I saw something after I took this in a Basquiat painting that looks very much like this. These spheres could be a head and breasts, you know, a tongue here. Who knows? But I don't want to tell people what they are. I call this mental playground, and it's an example of a flat plane photograph. In other words, it's not a landscape with perspective. It's a rock surface. There's a little bit of sky in the upper right. But otherwise, it's a rock surface. It's a relief, a bas relief or bas relief, that allows your mind to play. And I've noticed that in the late Surrealists, we're going to move on now. Here's another one. This is lava. And what are these things? I mean, it's very appealing. You don't know exactly why. This is another thing. This is called a taphonu, with taphony here. There's like the honeycomb pattern, but the whole thing is a big cavity. And it's a totally natural formation that I found in the wilds of southern Corsica. And it was also used as a shelter for herdsmen. Something else. This is from Doolin in Ireland. Just something that appeals to me. I don't know why. I assume it's a subconscious draw. Here, this is from an area very close to Dali's house again, called Salceria Petita. It's not Captacreus, but I see here. I don't know if you can see my cursor right in the middle. There's kind of a howling banshee. You see the mouth here, the nose, and the eyes. This is a granite very close to a beach, and I call this fossil banshee.
Wow. Look at the texture. My goodness. I can see the face in this one already.
Yeah, you see the face? It's kind of collapsed ET. So I call this intraterrestrial.
I love the names, Joel.
It's from a place called Crack in the Ground near Christmas Valley, Oregon, in southeastern Oregon, which is a volcanic fissure that you walk for about a mile, and then but the formations inside it were just amazing. Now here's something from Roche's Point in County Cork, Ireland. And this is this abstract? Is it liminal figuration? It's obviously limpets and their spawn. There's a little pool of water, which it looks like a sinister eye of a buried monster to me, but it doesn't have to be. But look at all the cross bedding here. Yeah. So what does this remind you of? And here are some more. This is in Salt Point State Park in California. Wow. Could it be Mondrian? Could it be Pollock? Let's just look at. And here, this is. These are little tiny tubes. It's referred to as frostwork. It's a rare cave formation from a cave called East Sudas in Sardinia. And I just have a little video light that I'm walking around with on the tour, and you know, there's no tripod. But is it figurative? Is there a face? Is there like an Archimbaldo face at the end here on the left, or is it pure abstract? Doesn't matter. Now this is a Mata painting to give you an idea of what I mean by liminal figuration. And here's Jackson Pollock, okay, Arabesque, 1948. This is Mata that got a little mixed up. I'm sorry, but liminal figuration. This is Pollen. This is Wolfgang Pollen. Liminal figuration, and here's Pollock. Okay, and I should have and this is Pollen. I'm sorry, it's a little mixed up between the late Surrealists and the abstract expressionists. Then this one should have preceded it. Okay, a detail of Pollock. Yeah. All right, but you see, now they're using colors. Paints are colors, and of course, black and white as well. And I'm largely working in black and white, but this is color. This is a photograph from a dry riverbed in stream bed in Bisti Badlands, one of my favorite places, from 2012. And I thought, oh, this is really interesting, but I don't know what it means. So I just left it alone. It's not in my book. And then after really reading more books on the abstract expressionists and learning about Pollock's painting called Mural, I went back to this. Wait a second, there are very similar gestures in Mural, except that over here on the bottom left, if you can see my cursor, there's a little gesture from Matisse. Right up here too.
Oh, I see it. The little, almost like the hand.
Yeah.
Yep. I totally see that. Wow.
Yeah. But then, if we look at his mural, it's a little different. But there's.
Do you have a Matisse that we can show? Oh, this is a
1943, which was on loan to the Guggenheim from Iowa for about 2 months. But you can see the repetitive motifs. There's something modularly similar to my sand rivers for JP, that's Jackson Pollock. All right. Now here's once again back in East Sudas Cave. I'm so glad I went there. The frostwork and these stalagmites coming down, but my God, they reminded me of blue poles of Pollock.
Yep.
Right. All right. So it helps There's the whole picture, the whole frame of blue poles. It helps to familiarize yourself with
Look at that.
modern
Wow.
art, okay? And this became the cover of Natural History magazine in June of 20.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was nice. Now here's a geological landscape, and to me this looked like a dead city. You know, here are cap rocks missing their caps, have fallen off. Tentacle-like things, War of the Worlds, you might think of. This is a close-up of dried mud from Bisti. Now here's another dried mud with outlines that are detached from the center. Okay, what does that remind you of? Well, it reminded me of Gorky.
Yep.
And if you reverse this, you get this. And
Wow.
this is even closer to my version. So, you know, these are not copies. That's another Gorky. Now, again, look at the notion of liminal figuration. They're almost something you recognize. If it may appeal to you without you being able to name it, and for that I'd say it's your unconscious reacting. So they were getting inside our heads, inside our unconscious, these late surrealists, and the geology does that too. This does the same thing for me. Now, but mine is not fictional. Mine is literal.
I thought that dried mud could be so beautiful.
And I call this palimpsest, because it has layers of implied rainstorms. You can see these little cracks. That's one rainstorm, and these little gradients, these mini gradients, and these flow here, and then finally ending up in the curled mud, which is the fastest dried. That's the curled means it dried very quickly. So the two different rates of drying, the top and the bottom, create the curl. So I enlarged this to 24 by 36 inches canvas. I have that in my living room. To me, it just fascinates me on end.
Joel, just to interject here, if anybody is interested in buying these original works, because these photographs are Joel's original photographs, how can they do that? Where can they go and purchase these works?
Well, I am now setting up a new website. This is your inspiration, Rachel. I said, I got to do it. And I'm doing a new website where it'll be very easy to buy them. Okay. Right now, you can see them at joelsimpsonart.com on my older website, but it's not set up for purchase. And then just email me or call me. My contact information is very easily obtainable on that one, or on earthforms.net, which is the book's website. So just get in contact with me.
Okay, I just dropped those in the comments, both on YouTube and Facebook, just if anybody wants to.
It'll be very simple. In a few days, it'll be very simple. Same joelsimpsonart.com. I'm going to transfer it over.
Fabulous. All right, I'm going to pass the mic back to you, Joel. This is fascinating, so please keep going.
Roberto Mata, it's the reversal of his. It's the monochromatic version reversed. So white is black and black is white. And as a painting analog of the palimpsest image. Can I go backwards? Yeah. There's the palimpsest. Okay. Now again, this is not a copy. There's the original. Oh, I see. No, this is not a reversal. It's merely monochromatic. Okay, but you can see it's kind of the same aesthetic. Now Mata's doing this out of his head. It's fictional, and I'm working with fact. Now here, I don't know, do you see, is there a face or not? I mean, is it scary or not? I don't know. Oh, no, look at this. This is my Max Ernst piece. Look at this. And the next one is, here's Max Ernst. You can see the kinds of gestures, okay, he's using. And this is bright sunlight. You're not supposed to take landscapes in bright sunlight. But if you get close and you take these miniscapes, the shadow is often very interesting, okay? There's actually a bird there. This is from inside a lava tube. This is a kind of a cave that's not a karst cave. It's made from lava flowing along the ground and then emptying out and hardening on the outside and then being buried over the centuries. I see a scorpion here. But here we are in the other lava tube is in Northern California. This is in Wadi Rum, Jordan. And I don't know, do you see lizards or not? You don't have to. This is from Santa Galura, Santa Maria de Galura in Sardinia, northern Sardinia, and it's a granite, littoral granite, granites at the edge of the sea, which remind me very much of Tanguy. This is Wind Cave in the Black Hills of South Dakota, and this again is Sudas. This could be Pollock. This is in Bonifacio in southern Corsica, and there's my book. I think that's this is Cap de Creus. This is where Dali spent his childhood, going to Cap de Creus, and he called it a catastrophe of cumuli in ruins. And this was one little detail of it that I call mask. Here's something I was fascinated with from Bisai Badlands again. I see a group of sculptures of native elders up here. Okay, so I call this the native Mount Rushmore. And Mount Rushmore is a thorn in the side of the Lakota because it's on their land, justifying the heads of the state that took their land from them. So this is the native Mount Rushmore, and that's their appearance. This is their thoughts, and this is their unconscious. So that's my little modular notion of this photograph. And now, is this a creature from the Tafoni-rich Salt Point State Park in California? This is Tafoni right here. I call it Tafonosaurus, like rhinoceros, Tafonosaurus. And that's the end of what I have prepared for you today.
This is unbelievable, Joel. I'm so glad we got to actually look through the whole thing. It's fabulous.
Oh, thank you.
Oh my goodness, so many comments in the feed here. Does anybody have any questions for Joel? I see Deb Lee says here, palimpsest. I cannot even say that word. Is one of my favorite words. I totally get the photo.
Thank you, Deb. You know what a palimpsest is? Does everyone know what a palimpsest is? A real palimpsest.
Do educate us, Joel.
Okay, it's a medieval manuscript written on parchment. They didn't have paper. They had parchment, which is made of sheepskin. It was very expensive. So what they would do, they would erase a text and then write a text over it in order to reuse the parchment. Okay, but with modern methods of spectroscopy, we can actually see the indentations and read the earlier text. So we can read the several, there may be more than one, we can decipher the several texts on top of each other. So that photograph shows you 3 or 4 rainstorms that you can decipher, but they're all superimposed on each other. So that's why I called it that. Amazing.
We have a couple of new comments here. Let's see. Heather Davidson says, I can't believe this is free. This has been so wonderful and so fascinating, Joel. I feel like this is a presentation that needs to be, we need to get this spread far and wide, because it's the parallels between, these artists that you've picked out. It's just, all the various nuances of their style, and the parallels between these geological formats are just unbelievable, and things that, a layperson would never notice. But I hope that folks are going to be looking now a little deeper, maybe with their unconsciousness.
Well, let me just add something that gives me chills, because you're going in that direction. And that is, the fact is that this Earth, which we think of as impersonal, right, and other, of course, we come out of the Earth. In several billion years, we've been created. We come out of the Earth, and yet the Earth can be the projection screen for our unconscious. You could say the unconscious of the Earth contacts the unconscious of the humans through an artistic agency. But it's out there for anyone, okay? I've just learned to see it. And who has taught me? The artists have taught me. The artists who probe the unconscious and who put it into their art in clear terms. Their art that may be enigmatic and is not representational necessarily. It goes deep. So you learn to do it there, and then you start seeing it out there in the real world, not fiction. That's what I have to say. So, right.
Joel, I have to ask, because everything that you're saying is kind of it's drawing these parallels between our connection to the earth and that almost being like a spiritual experience.
Yeah.
Are you a religious person, or are you an atheist?
Well, I'm a total atheist in terms of, I don't believe in,
I sensed that.
Yeah, I don't believe in supernatural beings, but the natural is so amazing. It's mind-boggling. We have no idea how incredible it is. We live in this middle level reality, thinking that most of reality can be accounted for by what we see. No, it's both much larger and much smaller. But it's not just on a visual scale, it's also on a time scale, right? And it's also on a distance scale, right? Get out of one's immediate surroundings and travel. Go to these amazing places where millions of years, even billions of years, is on display. Or on display. They're incredibly old, right? We're just we're coming so late in the day, but of course there's a future too, hopefully. But and then you're not only, or one is not only turned on by the diversity and the otherness of the things, but then you start to see familiarity. And it reminds me of when I was in Oregon, in a totally new place, and easy to get lost. And then it got dark and there was no moon, and I looked up and I saw the stars, and I was home because I knew where I was. There's a Big Dipper, there's Orion, there's the Milky Way. So, it gets dark and all of a sudden you're at home in the universe. Now, maybe an illusion. It may still be miles from the nearest gas station or food source. But there are ways of feeling at home in this great universe. And that's true of rocks too, when you learn how to look. Of course, the stars you can learn about at home, and then you go out and see them. Not in New Jersey, though; it's too bright.
This is true. I can vouch for that. Yeah. Has there been just on that kind of tone of the spiritual, emotional connection to the earth? Has there been one particular place that you've experienced where you felt that richness of connection to Mother Nature?
Well, I mean, it's the high, I guess, the altered state that I'm in when I'm in this. I'm very, very grateful for my education, the people I've studied, the people I've known, to have given me this broad consciousness. And that's what I recommend for everyone. Expand your consciousness, visual, historical, psychological, artistic. Expand it, and the world will be rich for you. I don't have patience for television, I have to tell you. Television is much too narrow for me, and I know I'm missing good things. But of course, there's always so much work to do when you work by yourself. Of course, they say, was it working for yourself? You only work half time, but 12 hours a day ain't bad.
I love that. Joel, how would you suggest that somebody who's, I think you're inspiring a lot of people, and you will continue to inspire a lot of people with what you've shared during this amazing session. But for somebody who's thinking, well, how do I tap into that consciousness? How do I expand my horizons? What would be your advice to them?
Well, first of all, the pathways are all over the place. All right. Easy thing. Go to the Museum of Modern Art. Go to art museums and try to relate to the paintings, especially the ones that are a little enigmatic for you, a little difficult for you. Read challenging literature. Read Faulkner. Read Joyce. Read good novels. Read Paul Theroux's travelogues. Read Ghost Train to the Eastern Star, for example. Brilliant book about his travels in Asia. That's enormously mind-expanding. I wish I could write like him. Listen to music. Listen to challenging music. Listen to Beethoven and Brahms, but also Charles Ives and Bela Bartok. See where those take you. I mean, I've studied all these things. I've analyzed the Fibonacci series in the string quartets of Bela Bartok, for example, one of them. And then and one time, years and years ago, I photographed the shimmering reflection of a pine tree in the Delaware River, and I called it Bartok. And it was just a sense I had. And then years later, this is like 1968, and then in 1992 or three, I had a music theory course, and I found the Fibonacci series embedded in his work, which gives you a sense of why you sense that it's so real. It's like raindrops dripping or a ball bouncing. Okay, you hear these rhythms of Bartok. Oh, that's what I was sensing when I named that photograph. All right.
Amazing.
And recently, I found a photograph of a question mark. What looks like a question mark, a natural question mark. So I named it after the Charles Ives 1906 piece, The Unanswered Question.
This is just incredible.
All over the place. It's all over the place. Just don't be restricted by the television notion of what culture is.
And also now the internet as well, because let's face it, it can be so consuming. A lot
on the internet. You can look up every one of these artists. You can hear a Brahms symphony and see the players. I mean, it's an enormous resource. Photography is the perfect art for the internet. You can look up any photographer. If anyone wants to, I have a list of my favorite photographers, about 100 of them, and just look up every one. You can educate yourself. Of course, you're talking about social media and how narrowing that can be. Yeah.
I think everybody has on their phone a little. You can access the data as to how much time you're spending on your cell phone, and it's really quite scary. Certainly for somebody whose business revolves around digital marketing, it's a little frightening when you look at those numbers sometimes. And if nothing else, this has been such an incredible session, Joel, and there's so much value here. But one of the things that I'm certainly taking away is that I need to spend more time with the universe. The universe is what heals us. It's what sparks your soul, sparks your curiosity, your creativity, and all these other things are just distractions. So just an amazing session, Joel. I'm so grateful. I would love to see you
too. Let me say, you have an amazing mission, and you're so good at it. We get all kinds of appeals for methods wanting to take our money, and I'm not only are you so well organized, but you're so inspiring. You're doing a great thing, Rachel. You're enabling people to realize themselves with their art. I could ask you the same question. When do you sleep? Because you also do your art, right?
Occasionally.
Right, in the interstices, right, in the cracks. Yeah. But no, I'm so grateful to you.
Well, it is a mutual admiration. So I would love to hear from our audience. Does anybody have any questions for Joel? Take advantage of the fact that this is live and you have this brilliant mind here with you right now, folks, and do jump in with some questions. I see a great comment here. Just replaying your comment about the universe. At home in the universe, this is priceless. Thank you for tuning in, Paolo.
Study the stars.
Sorry. Heather Davidson, a fellow atheist. Atheists rule. Heather is a phenomenal scientist joining us. I see Judith, genius. A lot of great one-word feedback here, folks. I think people are just very inspired this morning.
Remember Henry James said, genius is the capacity for taking infinite pains. You take infinite pains because you love what you do, and you love the feeling that you get from other people's great art and your own successes more than you love anything else, non-human, of course, anything else material in the world.
Beautiful. I'm just scrolling through to see if there's any other comments here. I think this is our very own Jen. Ridiculous how gorgeous nature is. Yeah, I think.
And we wreck it too. It's unfortunate what we're doing to it. Years ago, when I decided to give up my belief in God, I said, I don't believe in anything, in any divine consciousness or intentionality. Right? Intentionality, the God would have to be a terrible joker or extremely cruel if there were one. As Voltaire said, if there weren't a God, we'd have to invent one. And Léo Ferré, the great French poet, singer, said, Et si Dieu existait, il faudrait s'en débarrasser. And if God existed, we'd have to get rid of him.
I love that.
He was an anarchist and revolutionary. Okay, so if there is no divine consciousness or intentionality, then everything we see in the geological world is the Earth's unconscious. It's a little verbal trick, okay? The Earth's unconscious. So there's our unconscious projecting onto the Earth's unconscious. It's a little conceit, all right? You can't build a scientific theory on it, but it's kind of a poetic idea.
It's beautiful, and so much food for thought here, folks. Amazing, Joel. Thank you so much. I feel like we're going to be hearing more from Joel. I think this is just such a phenomenal subject. It's we're opening a can of worms in terms of the
fired worms,
worms in the mud. The parallels between these two incredible, experiences, the experience of nature, the experience of art, and bringing them together, Joel, in such a unique way. And how you're doing this is you're really starting a movement, I think, in terms of, defining this form of expression as, geological abstract. It's just a beautiful, beautiful thing. One quick comment here from Paula. Boom, so many gems. Thank you, Joel. Oh my gosh. The French singer Ferrer. You are my #1 hero, hands down. I think you got a new fan, Joel.
Thank you, Paola. Ferrer, that's F-E-R-R-E, accent aigu.
You can't trust an English person with a French pronunciation. We're going to butcher it every time.
No. Because there is Ferrer. There is another Ferrer. There's another entertainer, right?
One quick last question, if I may. Just because I think that.
But thank you, Paola. Thank you so much.
The whole idea around spirituality, one of the things that has been really kind of fascinating to me as somebody who comes from the UK when I moved to the US is how intense the conversations are around religion, religious freedom in this country. It's just it really is mind-blowing to me. I had this kind of idea of what America was, and being here almost 12 years now, and seeing how protective people are of their religious beliefs, and how much otherism there is, in terms of the different religions and the whole conversation around it. How have you contended with that as somebody who is, a recovering religious person?
Right.
And how do you kind of address that when it comes up in conversation?
Well, first of all, religion has been a great consolation to the oppressed. And I respect this enormously. Some of my greatest heroes are obviously Martin Luther King Jr. and William Barber, and these are ecclesiastics, and especially in the Black community. And this was true in the Jewish community where I come from, that their belief in God as looking out for them sustained them, and it may be an illusion, as Freud said, but it's been a survival mechanism, and it's infused music and art, and I respect this. And this is a feature of the human mind, that we can find the strength to carry on against oppression, against adversity, and we conceptualize it, right? We hypostasize it as a being, and it's not my place to try to argue them out of it. I have another vision, and you might say my spiritual vision and my spiritual development as a young person was replaced by this aesthetic vision. But there's room for all of this. If I meet someone who's like me and is arguing for the existence of God, I'll go into a theological or theosophical discussion. How is there evil in the world if there's God? So forth. But and the history of religion is fascinating too. All the different sects that have risen up. I respect, for example, Chris Hedges, who has a Doctor of Divinity degree, who says that the current Christian fundamentalists who support Donald Trump are heretics. That's from inside religion. Right? And we have great moral traditions coming out of religion. I admire Jesus enormously. I don't believe that any human could be divine. I don't believe Caesar was divine. or Jesus. and that was an invitation of Caesar, of course, to declare Titius divine. So it's part of human history. So, I'll argue these things philosophically in the right forum, but I don't go around trying to disprove people's religion. But I do go around trying to expand people's relationship bandwidth to nature and to art, all arts, music, the visual arts, the graphic arts, the plastic arts, and dramatic arts and literary arts. Yeah, and that's our pathway. I mean, I wrote a paper on the artist as priest when I was an undergraduate, in the context of Joyce, who rejected his mother's religion and rejected the Catholicism of Ireland very strongly.
Art as our higher power. I love it.
Our higher power is inside us, and it's very real, because we do face adversity and we need places to go, and sometimes it's not enough to look at an inspired painting to feel better about our inner conflicts. And I've been through a lot of that. I've been through a lot of therapy and self-examination, and I've kept a journal since I was 18. And, it's very rich and very complex. People give it different names. I just don't believe in anything supernatural. But the natural is already super.
It sure is. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful place to leave this conversation, folks. I'm blown away. I'm sure our audience is blown away. This has been an incredible conversation. Do go check out Joel's work. Please visit his website. There are 2 websites. Joel's does have an amazing book out. Go purchase the book. Support what Joel is doing. We are artists. We do need support. Obviously, funding and supporting Joel's work allows him to get out there and do more of it. So we want to see more of this amazing, amazing work. Any last thoughts, Joel?
Thanks for the commercial.
Anytime.
All right. The websites are earthforms.net and joelsimpsonart.com. And that second one will soon be much easier to navigate and be updated.
Yeah, I just added both of them to the comments once again. So joelsimpsonart.com is the last one?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Folks, this conversation has been recorded, so it will be live on both YouTube and on Facebook. If you haven't done so already, please do hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Feel free to leave us a review on Conception Art's Facebook page, and obviously go and follow Joel on social media, visit his website, etc. And we will be back next Friday with another episode of Coffee with Artists. This is Rachel Wilkins reminding you to stay creative and curious, folks. Have a wonderful, wonderful Friday, everybody.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks, Joel.